Okay, we're going to continue using our SOHCAHTOA. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent. We're going to continue using those, but this time we are going to be looking for the angle. So we talked about if I need three things, the angle, the opposite, and the hypotenuse for sine, the angle, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse for cosine, the angle, the opposite, and the adjacent for tangent. As long as I know two of those three things, then I'm good. Well, we were looking at sides in the last video. In this one, we're going to look at the angles. So think back to when we did our inverse functions. So our inverse functions, we use this notation, f to the negative 1. So remember, that's not actually f to the negative 1 in the same way it's x to the negative 1. It's a notation that means the inverse. So we are going to use our sine inverse, cosine inverse, and tangent inverse to find the measure of these angles. So if sine of theta equals x, theta, I'm going to do inverse sine of both sides, is going to be inverse sine of x. If cosine theta equals x, then theta is going to be inverse cosine of x. And if tangent of theta equals x, then theta is going to be inverse tan of x. So we're going to use those inverses in order to find our missing angle measures in this case. Just giving myself a little bit more room. Here we go. So first, find your angle that you're looking for, which is right there. There's my theta. It's labeled as such. And what I have in reference to that angle is the opposite and the adjacent. So that's going to be tangent, because tangent uses opposite and adjacent. So I'm going to do tangent of theta is opposite over adjacent, so 8 over 14. I don't even really need to reduce or anything, because I'm going to go straight to my calculator. I'm going to punch into my calculator the inverse tangent of 8 over 14. Now, if you're using a handheld, you're going to go 8 over 14 and then hit inverse tangent. If you're using the online one or a scientific one, you're going to be able to go inverse tan 8 over 14. Make sure you're in degrees. Notice if I change over to radians, I get a different answer. So if you're using your handheld and you got 0.51914611142, then you're in radians. You need to figure out how to switch over to degrees. We'll talk about radians later, but for now, everything should be in degrees. So that means that my theta is 29.74. It says round to the nearest tenth, so 29.7. Yeah, just making sure I had that right. And that's it. So let's look at number 8. So again, first I need to find the angle that I'm looking for. In reference to that angle, I have the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So adjacent and hypotenuse is going to be cosine, adjacent and hypotenuse. So my cosine of theta is going to be 38 over 40. Again, I don't even bother reducing it because I'm going to go straight to my calculator anyway. So my theta is going to be inverse cosine of 38 over 40. I don't actually usually write this step, but I'm writing it so you know what you're punching into your calculator. So I go to my calculator. There's really not a way for you to do this without your calculator. Back in the day before fancy calculators, we used tables that had all these values on it for us, but for us, calculator. Again, making sure you're in degrees. I get 18.19, rounded to 1 decimal place is 18.2. And you know what? I should go back and put the little degree symbol there and the little degree symbol there, since we are talking angle measures in degrees. Now you're going to do 9 and 10 as part of the quiz assignment. And then in the next assignment, we're going to do the rest of this worksheet, the elevation and depression, angles of elevation and angles of depression.